Calling of the roll, please.
Councilwoman Spence-Benay.
Here.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Here.
Councilman Mann.
Here.
Councilwoman Weger. Here. Councilman Thompson.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here. Councilman Loudermilk had another commitment this evening. He will not be here. All right. Corrections to the journal of the preceding meeting if needed. So I think, Mr. Mann, you've been working on that, haven't you?
Yes, I'm going to make a recommendation to table these until our next meeting. But I do want to ask one question here, just for a clarification, because we had two different kinds of votes last month. We had a voice vote and we had a roll call vote. And I know that the information in here is accurate in terms of the 706152. Do we need to identify in the minutes whether it was a roll call vote or a voice vote, or is it all that matter to be the recording of the vote?
I think that the president should typically indicate whether it passed or did not pass, and in the particularly in the case of a voice vote. And I suppose ultimately, if the roll call is made and there's a count made, that may not be as problematic. But yes, I think generally it should at least indicate that it's passed or not. I don't know that's absolutely necessary. We have to have the count, but it should be passed unless there's a request for division of the assembly, in which case, yes, you absolutely need to count.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that, just so that there is some notation on here as to how the vote was called for. I think just for accurate reflection of the minutes.
I think if we can reflect that accurately, I mean, of course, my sole purpose was we had amendments on several of those items, so it was to expedite the meeting.
Yep, and once again, I'm not questioning all. I'm just saying if this is a record of what occurred, there are different kinds of votes that are called for, and should that record reflect whether it was a voice vote or a roll call vote. With that being said, I think there are just a few changes that need to be looked at by the council over the course of the next month. Bring it before the council at the next meeting along with the notes for tonight. So I move that we table these until the next meeting.
Second. Motion by Mr. Mann, seconded by Mr. Schweitzer. Any more comment? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Spence.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
While we're on the subject of minutes, the personnel committee minutes that are in the book, they need to have the rest as made part of that. It's reflected in January, February.
Okay.
It's on page 30. I know that you don't approve them, but just for a matter of record.
All right. Is there anything else? Okay, with that correction noticed. Okay, at this time, we open up the council meeting for public comment. I believe we have some guests here this evening that the whole community's become quite aware of. So if you'd like to, is there any other comment as well? Well, please come up.
Do I write down my name?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Jennifer Mullen, and I've never been to this particular meeting before, but I know a lot of you because I do a lot in the community. But I teach at Indiana State University, and I've also taught a little bit at Rose-Hulman as well. But I'm heavily involved in the community because, well, it's really not a surprise that it's kind of trendy to trash Terre Haute. So, and I always thought I'd leave Terre Haute, but here I am. And one of my friends once told me to bloom where you're planted. And I thought, what can I do, not in a leadership position, but what can I do to help change the community for the better? And I want to help change the perception of the community. And I'm speaking to you all today because I think it starts with leadership. And if you could help be our voice to change the perception of the town, that would be amazing. And I appreciate Councilman Morris asking me to be here to represent the Society of Trash Baggers. And we're not a nonprofit 501c3. We're just a bunch of people that want to pick up litter and make the town a better place. And litter is everywhere, and I realize that. But in order to grow the town economically, we have to look pretty. And I have no, obviously, control over the street lights or the curbs or the sidewalks that are broken. But what I can do is pick up some trash. So I have some amazing people with me here today. And Brent and Sam made us these hats so that vehicles won't run over us while we're picking up our trash. And my mom and my dad, and they're kind of the hometown heroes in picking up these trash. And we've been picking up since July 2018, and I haven't tracked the bags that long. I've only tracked them for the last month. But in a month, we have picked up about 400 trash bags of trash just in 1 month. 55-gallon trash bags. And if you can imagine how much litter that is, I would assume it's about 500 pieces of litter per bag. So anyway, I'm just here to ask if our council people would be interested in hosting cleanups for your districts. And I think it helps you to give a face to your district, and it helps the community as well. And I think Mike has been awesome at supplying us with grabbers, and the county's been awesome about supplying us with trash bags. And so anyway, I appreciate your help so far. And we've grown, the Trash Baggers group has grown over 500 members in 2 weeks. So we have 1,100 people in our group right now. So I'm challenging everybody to join that group and invite at least 10 to 20 people of your friends so that we can get to 10,000 in no time. So anyway, we have trash grabbers here. So Mike, you said I could pass these out?
Yep.
Yay, so you all
Thank
get a
you.
trash grabber.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep
Thank
your
you.
grabber to yourself.
I got one.
You got one, Mike. Can I pass them to you guys too?
There you go.
I won't take one unless you're coming to the city council meeting. If you're
Do what?
Are you coming to the city council meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, then you want to save this one for the city council meeting for me?
Oh, sure.
You can give that one to someone else tonight. I'll get mine
Okay.
at the city
All right,
council meeting.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give it to you. Thank you.
That way I won't get two.
Thanks.
Is this the second year, third year for your program?
We're just in year one.
You're just in year one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since July 2019, 18. Sorry. Oh, so year and a half. I'm sorry, just a year and a half. Yeah.
Okay.
So, questions?
Questions? Councilman?
No questions, but I'd just like to say, good on you. You guys are great. And as I had mentioned, the sheriff's department is going to provide a deputy when you're out in areas where there's not a shoulder along the highway. They're going to put a car with a flashing light along that area. People do need to be awfully careful although your shirts are pretty and your hats are pretty easily seen. And it's just a wonderful thing that you're doing. I'll be so happy to join you, and I've got some folks in mind to jump in and help you.
I appreciate that. So if everybody could just join that Facebook group, that would be amazing. And if also people could start saying we believe in a clean community, because if you start saying at the top, people follow suit. But it takes the people at the top to do it.
I'm going to say thank you as well, and there are little things we can do too to reuse certain types of drinking devices, and I know there are a couple more here this evening. So little things that we can do to make a difference. Very, very nice job. Thank you.
A couple of you, Brent, Jennifer, you want to come up here, maybe present this? I'd like to honor one of our own from the Vigo County Highway Department that helps very much with passing this, getting this program working. So Nikki Clark, if you could step up here. Brent, maybe you want to tell her what they've been doing?
Thank you so much. And we do have cone signs.
Use the mic, please.
pickers.
Use the mic, please.
We have cone signs, pickers, anything to keep you safe, which is the first thing we want you to do. But wow, do we appreciate you. We've never seen so much trash get picked up. And we've got different programs, several programs, but nothing like yours have really come forth. So we appreciate you a lot. And thank you so much.
Yeah, I always hear your name, but I hadn't made.
Thank you. Thank you all.
When we pick up in the county, we try to put things in one area so that the county workers don't have to go down the road and stop 15, 20 times. And I call Nikki, and within a day or two, it's picked up, it's gone. She takes care of it, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, obviously, the community's starting to get behind this program and make a difference, and whatever we can do to help, we will at the county, I'm sure. Okay. Any more public comment? Seeing none, communications from elected officials and other officials and agencies of county.
Mr. President, members of the council, Michael Wright, attorney for the county commissioners. You should have each received a packet with 3 pictures contained within it that I wanted to just briefly describe to you what you're looking at. The items that I'm discussing here were turned in on the log sheet, will be assigned to committee tonight, but the maybe paper clipped in your packet. Yeah. So 2 of the items related to that proposal, the first deals with hydrite chemical. The property that was acquired by hydrite from the Quarter Midget Track Association, the county owned a piece of ground that it had sold to the Quarter Midget Association, but provided a reversionary clause in the deed. So when the Quarter Midget Track sold, that property came back to the county. And Hydrite is interested in acquiring that property. Some of the same environmental concerns that existed on the Coke Carbon property there to the north of that parcel exist there as well. And the county has tried to facilitate a transfer through the redevelopment department of both the county and the city. Because of the environmental concern associated with the property, that has not transpired. Hydrite knows the condition of the property. They're willing to remediate it. They've worked with IDEM before on the Quarter Midget Track property acquisition, so they're well versed in what they're dealing with, and this would be the first step in assigning appraisers to place a value on the property for acquisition. So I just wanted you to understand what that request was related to. The second item deals with an issue surrounding the juvenile center parking situation. The hotel to the north of the juvenile center was recently, in 2019, acquired by a new ownership group that has really closed off the possibility of providing parking anywhere for the vehicles that need to, for the people that need to park to go into the juvenile center and juvenile court. And the county has discussed acquisition simply to provide circulation around that building and provide some parking spots out in the front. And this, again, is going to be assigned to committee tonight, but I at least wanted you to understand why the request was being turned in for this potential acquisition of property as opposed to the sale of property as with the Hydrite situation. This is to potentially acquire a small sliver of ground in front of the juvenile center to provide some additional parking and provide circulation around the building. So that's it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
Okay, we'll sign that to committee for review. I'm sure there'll be some more questions about that.
I'm Kevin Gardner, Vigo County Assessor. I believe Calissa has given you the information that I'm here to discuss today. This has to do with an abatement that was granted to a company, Verdeco, back in 2014. Part of the issue is that there was an oversight in 2015. In the SB1 that was granted at that time, there was actually a deadline put on getting the new equipment put into operation, and the deadline was 3/2 of 2015. The equipment did not get put into operation at that time. It didn't go into operation until late 2016, so they filed the ERA in 2017, and they put the abated amount in the first year of the 10-year abatement. This actually should have been brought to the council's attention in 2017, but it was missed by the previous assessor for one reason or another, I'm not sure. But I guess we need to try to clear it up now. And in my opinion, the council has 4 options. The one option would be to deny the abatement because it was outside of the scope of the SB1, outside of the deadline that they were given to put it into operation. The other 3 options, and I think they're all laid out on the information that you've got. This was actually caught, and I know I seem to be jumping around a little bit, but this was actually caught by TMA, which is a company it's Tax Management Assessment Association. They were hired by the county to do an audit of personal property for the entire county. Personal property self-assessed. Because of it being self-assessed, we don't have the manpower to go visit every business to find out if the personal property is being submitted correctly. So this company, who is hired by multiple counties or counties throughout the state, we did hire this year. Last year, they began this year. So they caught this. And what their suggestion is that we leave the abatement as it is. They also found an error in the abated amount. By correcting that abated amount, leaving everything else as it is and correcting the percentages, it would put them currently in their 3rd year abatement for the production equipment they've got online. And it would still leave a shortfall to where Verdeco would owe approximately $56,000. The worst case scenario, if you rejected it, would mean they would have an $8 million underassessment spread out over 3 years. So with the 20% penalty and the taxes that would be on that, it would be, they would owe approximately $290,000. My suggestion, like I said, would be to go to the option, I think it's option 2 in the packet that you've got, which is what TMA suggests. At a worst-case scenario, I think you should go with option 1. Option 1 puts everything in its appropriate abated year, corrects the abated value, and then gets us to where it's actually a cleaner process, but that doubles the amount that they're being penalized, which would take it up to approximately $108,000. I think, and if I get the name wrong, I apologize, Mr. Llewellyn, who was part of the original paperwork that Verdeco filed, is here if you've got any questions for him. We did have a discussion before the meeting. He showed me some statutes by the state. They're a little legal, so that's kind of above me. Just in my opinion, it comes to the council to make their decision if they want to allow the abatement as it's been going, or if they want to deny it, or one of the 4 options that you've been given.
Okay. Normally, we'd assign this to a committee and have them review it. I think I've got it set up to go to the Budget Adjustment Committee. But we're all here, representations here, the assessors here. Any question from council about this? I think this caught a few of us a little bit off guard. So, any questions right now?
Mr. President, I welcome the opportunity, if it's not going to be terribly long, to have counsel for Verdeco. Are you prepared to make a statement this evening? I am comfortable with that, once again, knowing the assignment's going to be made, but by the way that you presented it tonight, I think it would be appropriate to at least hear an opening statement of some sort.
Mr. Llewellyn, please.
Thank you, Councilman Meehan. Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Jeff Llewellyn. I am an attorney with the Wilkinson Goler Law Firm representing Verdeco, and our firm did represent Verdeco in the original filing of this tax abatement back in 2014. And you all recognize me more recently from maybe a month ago when I was here on behalf of Verdeco for a different tax abatement. And maybe that's somewhat lucky in that you got a bit of a picture of, in a history of Verdeco and what they've done in the community and where they stand. And we also had to file our SB1, which shows our current employees and our payroll, et cetera. All of that information does show you that Verdeco did in fact comply with all of the technical requirements as far as creating the jobs, offering the benefits, producing the payroll that you required in granting or adopting this abatement in the first place. So there has been compliance in that regard. The only question was this trigger on the date. And I will tell you, in my opinion, and it's just my legal opinion, TMA has misapplied the law and made an error themselves in saying that it was not technically allowable and in force at present date. And I shared with your counsel, Mr. Effner, a copy of the research that I pulled, and I only recently got involved in this and kind of pulled it together quickly today, but I was pleasantly surprised in what I did find. And part of what I have given to Mr. Effner in the statute goes back to the fact that the council can adopt and can put certain restrictions on the economic revitalization area. So when I look at the original SB1, page 2, which was completed by the council and signed off by Kathy Miller at that time on behalf of the council and Timothy Saprodi, they inserted a date that said the designated area has been limited to a period of time not to exceed 1 calendar year. This the date this designation expires is 3/1/15. So that's where Mr. Gardner gets the date and says we needed to comply by 3/2/15. We had up until 3/1/15 for this to be designated a revitalization area. But the key is not when that designation ended, but it really goes back to, as the application says, first of all, we have to come and apply before we buy and install the equipment, which we did. But the statute that I've given Mr. Effner goes on to say that despite the fact, notwithstanding the fact that the designating body may limit the time period for the economic revitalization area, that limitation does not prevent the taxpayer from obtaining a deduction for the new equipment if, after the expiration of the revitalization area, if the equipment was described in a statement of benefits submitted to and approved by the designating body before expiration of the economic revitalization area. And it's a little convoluted, but I think summing it up, it says, despite the fact that the revitalization area time ended, if we gave to you the equipment that was going to be installed and you approved that equipment and abatement before the economic revitalization term ended, then we're still allowed to go forward and get the full deduction. And we know that that did happen because the expiration date was March of 15, and you approved the ordinance in July of 2014. So I think there has been actually technical we met the requirements, I guess is what I should say, and then I think TMA has misapplied thinking that we had to install the equipment before that economic revitalization date. And we readily admit it did not get installed before that date. I will point out that date, though, although it says you can extend the period for calendar years, only gave us a period of 8 months. So we were a little short there. But the fact of the matter is, due to financial reasons and economic reasons, Verdeco at the time could not meet that deadline. As we stated in the SB1 form and is noted within the form it says, it says these are estimated start dates and estimated completion dates. And we estimated and intended to comply, but for other reasons could not. But I think the key is we did what we had to do within the time that we had to do it technically. And then beyond that, you all know that we did what we had to do in the way of creating the jobs and creating the money and going forward. So I'm being a little long-winded and I apologize, but if the recommendation of TMA would be, as Mr. Gardner said, let's just treat it as if you're going today say perfect that 2014 resolution or reaffirm that 2014 resolution and make it effective from the date we installed the property forward for a 10-year period. I'm in favor of that, Verdeco's in favor of that, and we would respectfully ask that you do that. And Mr. Gardner just showed me earlier as we were talking that apparently there's been some discussion between TMA and our accountant that maybe there was a value difference as to the ultimate assessed value of the property. So instead of being 5.8 million, it was 5.2 million. And so therefore there is an adjustment that results in about $56,000 under your scenario option. And if that's accurate, I've spoken with Verdeco and I know they have no objection or contention with that as long as that adjustment meets with their accountant's adjustment and TMA's happy, we're fine with that. But again, we would respectfully request your reaffirmation of Resolution 2014, number 1. And I'll take any questions.
So I have a question. So when we do these abatements, they're for a specified length of time. And this one was what?
Well, it's kind of a dual question there. The abatement itself is for a 10-year period of time that we get to abate the property. The issue here was not the length of time of the abatement, but that there was a special designation. You are allowed to, as they say, put a time period on the economic revitalization area. And for whatever reason, in this case, it was done on an 8-month period of time.
So if we change that, we'll call it a start date, then it would still be a 10-year abatement
Correct. So
on the agreed-to amount.
Correct. On the agreed-to amount with TMA and our accountant, yes. And it would be, so we installed it in 2016. It goes into play in 2017 for the first year of the abatement, and we just move forward for 10 years from 2017. And I do believe that's what the statute actually calls for. But I know I'm dropping statutes on Mr. Effner here immediately, and I wouldn't expect him to chime in. But that's why I wanted to give him that information to kind of verify with you.
And from my office's standpoint, the two main things that I wanted to get cleared up, because this is kind of vague, is one, if it's still a valid abatement, which would be lean toward what he's discussing on that start date. And two is, if it's a 10-year abatement, when does the abatement begin? When the material is put in operation or the consecutive year? Because that's the other part of, that's the reason the option 1 and option 2 are the ones I talked about. Option 1 would be if we left it as in the first year of the 10-year abatement was the first year that it was in operation. That's option 2. Option 1 is if the 10-year abatement started on the year it was granted, then in 17 it was actually in its third year. They just missed their first 2 years. They missed the 100% and the 90%. Those are the two things that I really need cleared up by the council and given some guidance on how we need to proceed. And this will also affect other abatements that have been granted. Not to throw out any other information, but why do you know we have an abatement that was granted to Tredegar? This would have been their first year of their abatement and their equipment is not in operation. So they've either missed their first year of the abatement or the abatement starts when the equipment goes into operation. So it's just something that I'd like cleared up for my office so that we know how to proceed forward for the entire county. And I'm okay however you want to proceed, but I would like that guidance.
Good point. That Tredegar thing may never develop, and we knew that when we voted on it. Other questions?
Mr. President, it doesn't seem very beneficial to a company to have an abatement if it's not in effect when they don't have their equipment running at all. I mean, we're not giving them anything, as a matter of fact. It would seem beneficial when their equipment begins to run. That seems practical and reasonable to me. If that's not outrageous to apply something practical to a government standard.
I think in part what triggers the assessment is the filing of Form 103.
Yes.
And in Form 103, lists the property, and the Statement of Benefits form, which is submitted to you with each tax abatement request, does specifically instruct the applicant that they are to file the Form 103 only after the equipment is installed and fully functional. So if they're not to file until it's installed and fully functional, I don't think the intent is that the abatement would start before it ever gets to that point.
Mr. President, I want to put Mr. Effner on the spot real quick. Do you have any suggestions after a quick look over?
I really would want to review it in more detail. I mean, on the face of it, what Jeff gave me appears to be accurate, but I really want to look at it in more depth before I would make a recommendation.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't expect anything different, because I'm telling you, I read it 5 times before I thought I knew what it said.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, it sounds like we've got some good minds working on this. We should be able to come to a conclusion, hope satisfactory for everyone. I'm sure it will be. So we'll sign it to committee.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This time, I'd like to read something into the record to try to bring some clarity to our public safety related to local income tax. I think I've talked to most of the council members, and this is a a statement, and I'd just like for everyone in the county and the offices within the county to be aware of it. So, in 2018, Vigo County adopted a public safety-related local income tax for the primary purpose of constructing a new jail, funding the increased cost of operating that jail, and implementing various programs to reduce jail population. Construction bonds have been issued, and the county will benefit from rates lower than originally projected, resulting in lower than expected annual debt service costs. While we do not have a firm number on the annual operating cost of the new jail, we are confident that we can use a portion of this public safety-related local income tax funds for alternatives other than direct support of the jail. Vigo County continues to experience high rates of incarceration, and it seems prudent to explore options to lower the incarceration rates in our county. The Vigo County Council, in collaboration with other leaders in Vigo County government and the community partners, is working to identify the best uses for a defined amount of public safety-related local income tax funding for this purpose. While we have yet to identify what that amount will be, we hope to fund at least one significant program aimed at prevention and/or rehabilitation. We will continue to work to develop a plan dedicated to this purpose, and we expect to announce some draft proposals in the next few months. Thank you. Okay, that ends public officials, I believe. Reports from standing committees. Having none, reports from select committees. Having none, we have old business. And I believe that is the restructuring of the highway department. Mr. Thompson, can you take over on this?
Restructuring of highway department and addition of GIS department, 20-007. We had A, salary ordinance 2020-09, the assistant superintendent. Page 4 of the book. This is something that was tabled in February because he was still in that position, correct? No longer in that position? All right. So this is to delete the position. It passed committee 3-0 favorable.
Comments, motion, anything? Questions? I think we went over it pretty well last meeting, didn't we? Just didn't quite have it perfected. Yes.
As I recall, we did not want to eliminate the position because the individual had not been named to the new position, and we would be defunding a position that currently had someone in it. And if I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
We have all of the vocabulary correct now in the right funds, and we're in the right departments and everything. And we have the ability tonight then to delete this position. Is that correct?
That's the way I understand it. Yes.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Wager, and we have a second by Councilman Schweitzer. Any more comment? Question? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Spence Manette.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. Okay. Reduction appropriation.
And B is the reduction of appropriation 2020-02 Highway Administration. And that is on page 5. This is to reduce the amount, $57,237.
Okay. Question or motion? Question, Mr.
Quick
Mann.
question here. What we are doing is we are placing this money back into the highway fund?
The money stayed in the highway after eliminating appropriation, the authority to spend.
So we're eliminating it as a one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Would entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Rayner, seconded by Councilman Schweitzer. Any more comment? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Spence Manette.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weger. Aye. Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. Okay. Now we have new business, ordinance relating to appropriations. This also went through Personnel Committee. Oh, excuse me. In our agenda here, we have a report from our attorney, Mr. Effer, regarding encumbrances.
Okay. I think Mr. Bramble put this in here, appropriations. And this raised questions about the process. And Calissa then contacted Lori Rogers, who is the Director of County Audit Services at the State Board of Accounts, to get a clarification. Several emails were exchanged, which incidentally were copied to Wesley Bennett, who is the Commissioner of the Indiana Department of Local Government Finance. And without going through the emails in detail, Ms. Rogers indicated that the county council does need to approve encumbrances, and that the State Board of Accounts could take audit exception if the encumbrances are not approved. And I believe that eventually happened last year. And so anyway, I think the auditor has submitted the encumbrances to the council, and I guess it'd be my recommendation that these encumbrances be placed on the log sheet for consideration and approval by the council next month's meeting.
Okay, I would like to assign that to the Budget Adjustment Committee for review to their satisfaction. We did that process. Those as presented to us were about $4.9 million in encumbrances, if I'm correct. So, review them to your satisfaction and have a recommendation for us. It's going to be kind of short notice because we're going to have voting in here, so we're going to have a meeting, April 2nd. So, if you do that for us, I think that worked. The process worked well last year. So,
President Morris,
yes.
one of the things that helped last year and that made it go smoothly is that I believe Ms. Miller had reviewed those encumbrances and the backup information. May we ask that she do that again this year to support the efforts of the council in approving those?
I think so. Whatever we need to
Okay.
be satisfied with it.
Okay.
It's a lot of money.
It is. Thank you.
Okay. So that will be that process. Again, I'll assign that to review to budget adjustment. And all right, new businesses, ordinance relating to appropriations for the prosecutor's office. And I believe we have Mr. Roberts here from the prosecutor's office.
Yes. Good evening.
First one, it looks like established position for additional legal secretary, ROC 20-012, salary ordinance 2020-12. This went through committee 3-0, no rec. Read all these, talk about them all.
No, I think individual. I think again to Mr. Individual. That's all right, Rob?
Absolutely.
Just go through these one at a time. We've got 5. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So I guess they gave no recommendations, so I guess can you see present us something so we've got a recommendation why you need this?
Yes, thank you very much. I think you're well aware your agenda packet tonight is about 2/3 information just related to our requests. It went from 12 to 33 or 36 pages because of our information that's been provided. And of course, I also sent out an email with some additional follow-up here recently, and I hope each of you received that, had an opportunity to review that. I'm not sure what the order is for presentation here at the meeting. It looks like they may be in reverse order from our requests. But when the initial request was made, certainly I tried to stress that the order that we had presented the requests in were certainly the priority as far as our office was concerned, for which of those requests we were hoping to be funded. So the fourth of those requests was the additional legal secretary position. The numbers that were originally provided show the increase in the caseloads that have accompanied the last 3 years of the criminal justice system here in Vigo County. We started noticing that increase in 2017. 2018 is when I started actively following the numbers. And even when I started running the numbers on various occasions in 2019, I was shocked at the continued acceleration of the number of cases that were being filed. So when we look at the amount of filings that are taking place, obviously that generates a substantial amount of required processing, paperwork, filings with the courts, which begins certainly with our support staff. And about the only thing that I can say is I know that our support staff routinely comes in early, works through their lunch hours, and occasionally stays late to make sure that they're meeting all of the responsibilities that are required for these for the cases to be filed and for the attorneys to be ready in court. At this point in time, it's a situation where we did have this additional staff member approximately 10 years ago. For those of you that weren't part of the council at that time, there was a hiring freeze for the county. And at that time, we did, through that process, we lost a couple of staff positions. And certainly we've adapted and we've adjusted. And as I've said before, we have aggressively tried to utilize technology to make sure that we are being the most efficient office that we can. But I think we're at that tipping point. We've attempted to utilize the available technologies as much as possible, and now it's just a manpower issue. So at this point, I think that the increased number of case filings shows a need that we have within our office for the additional support staff. On top of that, there are certainly some other things that I would like to see our office be able to do that I think are long overdue and that I would utilize this additional support staff for. One of those primary things being a review of all of our forms and procedures that we use in our case management system. Those forms have never had a review since the system went into place. I've noticed over the last couple of years it's something that's been on my to-do list. Unfortunately, I have not been able to tackle that project, but we do have somebody in the office that I think would be capable of doing that. And so if we had the additional support, that would be one of the tasks that I would task her with as we removed some of her responsibilities. So we do have some things that I think could help us become more efficient and could become better, but this would be an important step in having the manpower to do that.
Okay, since it's moved ahead with no recommendation from the committee, other council members' questions? I don't see a dollar amount on this.
I believe Ms. Miller put together a spreadsheet which details the costs for the different positions. She was gracious enough to send that to me. I think it was Friday.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
you won't see a dollar amount on the salary ordinance like your last one.
Right.
The last time, it was because you approved something higher than what your classification was last month. This time, this is a request for the actual base pay of the classification.
Okay, all right. So we're negotiating base pay today.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
it's a comment C. Last time you went
gotcha.
about it.
Excellent. Is everyone clear on that, sort of? Okay, Mr. Mann?
I have a question. I'm trying to get my sheets matched up here.
Okay.
So help me out, Mr. Roberts. I'm looking at page 19 in our book. Is this the position that we're looking at? I'm looking at page 19 in the book for tonight.
This is for the part-time, that is for the next one. Let's see if they're the same.
So we're not
It's the
looking
same
at
information.
legal secretary, prosecutor's office.
I think it's page 29. I think 19 is the move from part-time to full-time, and 29 is the legal secretary.
Correct.
Okay, so on the previous one, it had moving from $12 to $20 an hour. This one has nothing in it, so I'm trying to figure out how you're providing us with info here because it's blank on this page.
On this one, this is a new position. On the previous one on page 19, they were wanting to take a part-time position they have and convert it to a full-time position. So the part-time position is currently being paid $12 an hour, and if it's full-time at a classified amount, it becomes the $20.05, I believe, an hour.
Okay, so there are employees identified here, and I don't want to say names. We are not looking to raise the pay for all the employees. We are looking at a singular position request.
Yes, and those individuals minus one are the ones that are in that position now. And they have 6 positions, correct?
Correct. I inadvertently left off one legal secretary's name on the
Okay,
list
so,
of employees in this position.
so there's person number 6.
Yes.
So we're looking to add a 7th position.
7.5. Because you have a part-time position that you're going to make, they're requesting it to be full-time, so that would be number 7. And then you have a new position entirely, which would be number 8. So what they're requesting is a total of 8 full-time legal secretaries. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I can explain the difference between the two requests.
Okay, let me get my pages straight here.
Certainly.
The salary ordinance we're looking at, Mr. Thompson, is 2012.
2020-20.
2020-12.
Okay, and that's on page 8.
Page 8, correct.
And I'm seeing general fund prosecutor, legal secretary, one position.
Correct.
So for what we're looking at now, we're looking for a single position to be added at the current rate of the other folks who have that same position.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to ask a general question, then I'm going to come back to this one. Your request tonight is composed of 4 different parts, I believe.
Yes.
Do you need all 4 of these parts? Is it your position tonight that it's all or nothing? Or are we looking at each individual position that there are needs that are being met by these particular position requests?
You are looking at each individual position. There are needs based on each of those requests. Okay. And in the original letter that I submitted, I put those in order of importance to the office and mine and Mr. Modison's opinions.
Okay. Now help me out here.
Yes.
Which one was your number 1 priority?
I would refer you back to our original letter dated January 31st, but that was the changing the responsibilities of the city court deputy prosecutor to become split amongst 2 prosecutors that are already hired by the office.
So that's letter D before us tonight.
Correct.
That's priority number 1.
Yes, I believe they're in reverse order for you tonight.
Okay, so then the establishment of additional deputy prosecutor would be 2. Part-time city court legal secretary to full-time would be?
I would actually, the part-time to full-time would be our 2nd. The full-time deputy prosecutor would be our 3rd.
Okay.
And then the full-time legal secretary position would be our fourth. While we believe that all four are necessary, yes, we did prioritize those in hopes of being able to help you in any decision-making.
Okay. Then to go back to my specific question here, when I'm looking at the notes from the committee meeting, I'm looking that the committee did give a 3-0 favorable to your highest priority.
Yes,
The other three were no recommendations, if I'm
that's correct.
I'm reading the note taking correctly. So the committee heard all this,
Yes,
and they said that city court deputy prosecutor being divided, 3-0 favorable.
correct.
I'm good. Thank you.
But
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Roberts? We have a dollar figure or anything as what this, if we did all these things, would cost? There are no changes to, there's changes from part-time to full-time, but no, I mean, we're staying within the, identifying an additional legal secretary as the same Comat C.
Councilman Morris, I believe the numbers that were provided by Ms. Miller to me show that if the council were to approve all four of the requests, the cost for that would be $195,938.
That's the difference on an annual basis.
That's it.
Sorry, yes, a difference compared to what's already been appropriated in the changes that we're asking.
But you're looking at a different cost from, if they were to be approved now, you have appropriations already in existence that you would need to adjust for, and you're also not looking at a full year, so there's a different cost would be, if you were to approve any of them. If you're looking at the whole package, the different cost would be $162,566. Since you're not looking at a legal secretary, if you were to hire a legal secretary, by the time they posted it, hired it, you're going to have insurance for 2/3 of the year. You're going to have salary for possibly 8 months or 9 or 8 months for the year. So you have to adjust those accordingly.
Mr. Mann, you've identified something here that I think that the committee struggled with, it's pointing it out. Would we want to address each one of these as in reference to priority? That'd be all right with all council members to address these in importance of priority. And I think, Ms. Bennett, you also got some clarification on these things. Would that work, you think?
Sure.
Okay, so number one is D, right?
009, yes.
And number two is
010.
okay. D. And number three is what?
011.
Okay. All right. And the one we were discussing initially is number 4 on your priority list.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, is that all right, Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll start with D.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so D is city court deputy prosecutor be divided between 2 people, split salary, ROC 20-009. This did pass committee favorable 3-0.
With amendment, if I might.
Yes.
We had made the request for this to happen. The discussion that ultimately came out of the committee was to approve it for the balance of 2020. And then we could see how it was operating, how it was working, and during the budget sessions for 2021, we could determine if this was working effectively or not, and whether or not some changes would need to be made in the future.
And if I may speak for my vote on the Personnel Committee, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, A, there was a difference, in fact, I think a decrease in the total cost expected across this change. And then also that basically the stipulation that it be a stipend, that we come back, take a look at what occurred, and then look at it as a permanent situation in the future. So I was in my vote, willing to approve that we're going to allocate these funds for a period of time, take a look at it, and then consider it later for permanent, to be addressed permanently.
Get it clear.
Well, Mr. President, I'm going to move that the council approve the number one priority, request of council 2020-009. Am I doing that right? It ought to be nice if I know what I'm talking about.
20-009.
Is it a,
Which is on what page of our booklet here?
2020.
okay, so I'm going to move that the council approve salary ordinance 2020-13, which was the number one priority. It is to help city court.
Correct.
Is that correct? There is a need there for city court. And this is going to come at a cost. Are we correct that the number is $13,629?
That is what a prorated amount would be, but the annual stipend is $17,718.
Okay.
Right.
But for
This
this
is
year,
prorated for 20 more pays, is how that was put in.
very good. So, Mr. President, that's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Mr. Mann, motion, Ms. Spence Burnett, seconded. Any more discussion, clarification, et cetera? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Councilwoman Spence Burnett.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wager.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
And then the second priority, which is actually B on here. Is that the way we're going?
Yes. Let's go that way.
Reclassify part-time city court legal secretary to full-time. Salary ordinance 20-10. And this went through committee 3-0, no recommendation.
Okay. So. Guess you want to talk a little bit on that, Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. President. The request to convert this part-time position to a full-time position is in response to a move made by this council back in 2018 when we were going through the budget process for 2019. At that time, we knew there were going to be changes on the horizon for Terre Haute City Court. Those changes primarily involved a change in the processes. For decades, there were processes in place, primarily police officers filing the charges in the courts, those charges not being reviewed by a deputy prosecutor until it was actually gone through the filing process and a defendant was advised of their rights. It was a problem identified by city court judges, by people in our office, but there was never a real good opportunity to make that change. In 2019, we knew that the city court was going to be transitioning into an electronic filing process and that we would be going into that process by utilizing our case management system, the prosecuting case management system, or PCMS. Knowing that we were going to be picking up that additional amount of work on every single case, I came before the council and asked for an additional legal secretary for city court. At that time, council members suggested that we start off with just a part-time legal secretary approved for 25 hours a week at the hourly rate that the county had set to see if that would meet our needs. While that certainly helped to meet our needs, when I've talked with the attorneys, with the clerk, and with the city court judge, there are things that we're currently unable to meet or meet on a timely fashion. Technically speaking, city court's supposed to start at 8:30 in the morning. I've been advised it's very rare that we actually have all of our paperwork prepared by 8:30 in the morning. So as court is going on, the new paperwork is getting processed. It's being forwarded in through the system where it makes it to the judge, and then the judge can call that person up for their initial hearing. Additionally, there are certain statutory requirements that we've never met and we still are not meeting. One of those is anytime someone is placed on the infraction deferral program. You hear me talk about the income that we receive from the infraction deferral program on a regular basis. That's where the grants that we provide to the community and to law enforcement or equipment that we buy law enforcement, that's where that income comes from. We're obligated to provide, to put that into our system so that other counties throughout the state will then have access and know who's gone through the infraction deferral program in our county, and we are not doing that. We have never met that standard. We have never met that obligation or that responsibility. So there are things like that that we need to be doing. And again, would I like to have more support in there so that we're relying less on the city clerk office and their staff? Absolutely. But I also understand the council's desire to take baby steps through this and see what we can meet, and then see if we're not meeting those needs, adjust in the future. And so I'm just looking for that next baby step. We have someone that's very qualified working in the office. She's gone through all the training. She understands the system. We would just like for her to be there in a full-time capacity so that she can help us to adjust our processes and meet those needs and those requirements.
Other questions?
I just have one, Mr. President.
Sure.
Give me some direction here.
Sure.
How many hours is this individual working right now?
25.
So full-time would mean?
37. Or no, I'm sorry, 35.
So we're looking at an additional $38,000 for 10 hours a week.
Correct.
Your position is those 10 hours a week will make a huge difference.
I think it will make a huge difference, yes. Just as importantly, I think that my fear is that we lose a qualified employee if we're not able to put her in a full-time position. And I certainly don't want to do that either.
And it is your position tonight that it is better to have a person move from part-time to full-time than to give another part-time with 25 additional hours. That is your position tonight.
It is for multiple reasons. One, there's no space available in Terre Haute City Court. There is no room to put an additional person in that space. They created very, very small quarters for this change when it went into effect at the beginning of 2019. And that was a very huge gift from the then chief deputy clerk, but now the clerk in Terre Haute City Court. So there are other considerations that I think that makes this the best option, including that, yes.
My math is incorrect. No. It's 28,000 more. So 28,000 additional dollars
38.
for the 10 hours a week.
And as was noted in the previous information that I provided, without having the particular numbers, certainly I realize that if the council passed our first priority, that would actually be a reduction in costs overall. And so that reduction in costs for that first request would help to offset the additional expenses for our second request.
You brought this up. So it's 10 hours a week, 520 hours a year, going to bring us in compliance with the infraction deferral?
I don't know. I'm working on some other things that will hopefully help. Mr. Modest and I have met with the company that will hopefully be, while they won't have a huge impact on the front end of our infraction deferral requirements, they'll take away from some of the other responsibilities that we have as far as mailing, processing payments, some of those things. So we're hopefully going to have a vendor that's going to come in and handle some of those additional requirements that happen after we get these people into the system. So those are some other areas that I'm looking into and that we're actively pursuing to try and help to bring us into compliance that are not going to cost the county additional dollars.
making this employee full-time in our county, does it put it at a competitive rate or at a competitive rate for the same position in other counties?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so you fear losing her to another county for that pay?
Or even the private sector, absolutely.
Is there a cost involved in the company that you all are researching?
Not for us. They make their money by implementing additional educational programming associated with some of our cases, whether it's a traffic education school, similar to a defensive driving course. These are all online courses that they offer. Some of them are marijuana cessation courses, different smoking cessation, different things like that that are have been developed and have been validated. And so that's how some of the programming that they would bring in, they make their money by typically a $40 fee that's associated with their programming.
And those programs would be required of people coming through the court?
For certain offenses, yes.
So we're going to pay for their services on the backs of people coming through the court?
Right now, we already have many of those programs in place that people have to pay. Currently, the marijuana program at one point in time, I believe, was $250. When I questioned the charge on that program, it was $150. If we offer this as an alternative, we're actually decreasing some of the expenses. So on some areas where we don't have any type of programming, there may be that additional expense. In other areas where we have similar programming, there may be a decrease for some offenders.
So we're offering that programming now at maybe a higher cost per person. Where does the revenue from that money go now that would then be in the future, if we engage with this company, will go to them?
It's currently going to the different providers that the city court uses. The one for the marijuana program, I believe, goes through Choices.
Okay.
But, and again, that doesn't mean we would exclusively utilize one over the other. It just means it would give us different options depending on the offense of which program we would recommend. If somebody was a first-time person through the program, we may recommend just an online course. If somebody has come back on multiple occasions, then maybe we look at the more intensive course that's in person. So it just gives us some different options to utilize.
And I think I heard you mention that we do get infraction deferral money,
Income, yes.
even though we don't meet the statute, the requirements of the statute?
Even though we're not meeting the reporting requirements, yes, that's correct.
So there's no discernible problem in terms of the money that we get. We don't get less, as far as we know. We don't get nothing because we don't meet that statute. We're not meeting it. We'd like to, but that won't cause us to get more money because we're already getting money regardless of having met the statute.
Correct at this point.
Okay.
What happens when this person goes on vacation?
Right now, let me backtrack. When we only had the one full-time person in city court, our office on the county side would try to cover as much as possible, and city court would then also, the clerk staff would assist as much as possible. That's not as practical now, just because of the simple fact that now that we're using PCMS for the processing of those cases, the clerk's office does not have access to our case management database for many reasons, but primarily because all of our cases are in there, and there are certain things that are confidential that we don't want other people having access to. So as of this point in time, they divide those responsibilities with any assistance that we can provide from the legal secretaries in the courthouse.
Any other questions? Well,
Mr. President,
yes.
I do think, being somewhat familiar with the city court operation, I think having a secretary in there to hasten along that paperwork will make all the deputies' jobs easier. I know this is a fact, and I think it's probably money well spent. I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
A question, Mr. President. Do we need to make a motion to eliminate the part-time position?
I would think that'd be a housekeeping item, yeah.
Cleans it up.
For that we send to them if we have knowledge of it. But in your salary ordinance, you don't address
We don't have to do that.
part-time, so I guess that would be a
On the one,
attorney question is how he wanted to do that, because you don't address part-time. You put money in a budget. You don't address part-time
We don't have to worry about it.
employees. Only certain ones do you
they're on,
address in the salary
they're on the
ordinance.
they are on the salary, I mean,
144.
the amount is on the salary ordinance. Well, no, it's in the appropriation.
It's in the appropriation of the budget. but
At
it's
what
not
date will that
specifically
be
listed in the
effective, Rob?
salary
Like
ordinance.
immediately?
I believe there has to be is there an approval process through the state similar to budget changes for
You
this?
would have to do that, and you also have to post, you should maybe check with HR and see what the
Sure.
postage requirements are. Even if it's an internal.
The additional appropriation would go to the state.
Yeah.
The increase. Appropriation only, not
So
position.
we would post it
don't worry about that,
immediately in
just post it.
anticipation of it being approved by the state, and it would take a number of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any other discussion or comment?
Call for the question.
Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please. Ms. Auditor.
Councilwoman Spence Bennett.
I want to say, Mr. Roberts, I really appreciate your patience in answering all the questions that I've asked about these requests and all requests that you bring before us. I'm really torn, and I could say this about all of these probably. I really appreciate the fact that we made the planning statement earlier. I'm looking forward and excited about that, really yielding some benefits. I continue to be a little bit frustrated or disappointed when, despite the fact that we are looking at adding staff, there rarely is a commitment to or any real definition on what specific improvements. Are we going to meet the statute? Are we not? Well, maybe, maybe not. I can't tell you that. I know there are a lot of ifs, and I know a lot of things happen. But, you know, the fact that we don't seem to have benchmarks, there's a little bit more in some of your other requests that is different from that I'm pleased to see. But that challenges me, and I don't know what to do. It seems like the problem is getting bigger, the allocation of staffing is getting bigger, and I can't really feel good about voting for these things until I see as a county that we've got a definite effort and we're moving forward on applying funding to the things that will stop, if they can, if they ever can, stop things from just getting bigger and bigger in terms of the traffic and so forth. I know these are issues. I know you want to do things better and faster. I think because I just feel like I don't have any other way to say this in Vigo County, that we have to spend money. I wish every time we brought something like this to the council, we would be required to show that we've got another submission that will cause people to stay out of the system or keep them from re-entering the system. And that's not happening right now. So I don't have any other way to make this point other than to say I'm voting nay.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Yes. Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Nay.
Councilwoman Weger,
Aye.
Councilman Thompson,
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. Next,
Next would be C, establish position for additional deputy prosecutor, ROC 20-011. And this went through committee 3-0, no recommendation.
Mr. Roberts, you want to, I guess?
I would be glad to. First off, I would just like to point out one of the things that I have tried to bring before you on a regular basis is salaries in comparison to Vigo County with other counties. When I wrote the letter back on January 31st, I identified a number of counties that had currently open positions that were all anywhere from the $60,000 to the $80,000 range. In that, I noted Jackson County with a starting salary for misdemeanor and traffic cases, essentially a city court prosecutor here in Vigo County with a starting salary of $67,226. A child support and criminal case deputy prosecutor in Martin County, $60,000. Tippecanoe County deputy prosecutor, $67,954 as a starting salary. Wayne County, a deputy prosecutor position, starting salary of $80,306. When I checked 2 days ago, the only one of those positions that had been filled and removed from the list was the Wayne County position at $80,000. Since that time, there has been a Jefferson County position for child support and criminal cases starting at $70,702. An additional deputy prosecutor spot for a full-time deputy prosecutor position in Lawrence County, starting salary of $82,000. St. Joseph County, major crime handling major crimes, $68,000 to $73,000, commensurate with experience, and the list just keeps going on and on. This is not a situation that is just challenging for Vigo County at this point in time. Attracting people to become deputy prosecutors is very difficult. I appreciate the efforts that this council has made just over the last 5 years in improving and making our salaries at least more competitive. I understand the challenges that go along with that when we combine that with the system that we have in place for our public defenders, and that their salaries have to be commensurate and in proportion to our to our highest paid deputy prosecutor. So I do appreciate all of the efforts that have been made. As I've said before, we have attempted to push different options forward to try and meet the needs of the criminal justice system in Vigo County. One of those options that we pushed was a deputy prosecutor being assigned strictly to making plea offers on cases. And during that tenure of that deputy prosecutor, over 500 plea offers were made. We saw no appreciable difference in the speed at which those cases were being processed. What we would like to do with the office is to have sufficient staffing so that we can meet our own benchmarks for processing these cases and pushing them through. I was advised at a meeting last week, as I shared in the email, one of the judges looked at me jokingly and said, well, we are going to be implementing a case management system in Vigo County, and the prosecutor's office is not going to like it. I asked for a copy of that proposed system that they're discussing. I haven't received that yet. So whether or not the prosecutor's office is going to implement our own procedures, which I would like to, we know that there's some changes coming on the horizon from the judges. That's going to, I'm assuming, be a more aggressive scheduling of certain types of cases, and we're going to have to be able to meet that. And so, again, I would like for us to be able to put a more aggressive timetable on the evaluation and scheduling of our cases that's been gained through the investigation. Police reports, photographs, any type of evidence. We have our case file that we create with that, and then we provide all of that to the defense. Under the local rules, that has to be completed within 30 days. We are going to we've gone to a mostly electronic format for that. We are in the process of working with the Terre Haute Police Department and working with the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council and developing a system where we can do that completely electronically. We can't do that completely electronically right now because things like video recorded interviews, cell phone data downloads, those files are too large for traditional methods of exchange such as email and that sort of thing. So we're working on developing, whether it's our own server, whether it's going through a Google Drive type of option, but we're looking at trying to develop something where that can be done completely electronically so we can get that easily accomplished at or before that 30-day mark. Then what I would like to see happen is as soon as we get that processed, it goes to the deputy prosecutor who then will immediately review that, look at the case, review and find out whether or not there's any additional investigation that we would like to request from the detectives on the case, whether or not it's been assigned to a detective, maybe have one assigned to do additional investigation, and also develop a communication with the victim in the case, if there is a victim, and begin and prepare a plea agreement to offer to the defense in the case. And I would like to see that benchmark hit at the 60-day mark on all the cases. That doesn't currently happen. I think if we could meet that aspect earlier, then we would then look to the other stages of the process, whether it's the courts or the defense attorneys, to then hopefully meet their obligations earlier as well. Potentially accelerating the process of cases getting resolved. But we would be accelerating our processes to move that forward. We don't have the staff to do that right now. I think that with an additional staff member, we'll be much closer. With the changes in the discovery process that we're looking at, I think we'll have a better opportunity to make that a reality. And so certainly that's the goal that we're setting within the office if we have the sufficient amount of attorneys. That being said, we know that when the criminal justice study came through, they recommended it more than the attorneys that we're requesting at this point. There's a balancing act. And so I would just like to see this as a step. And if we're able to meet those targets with this amount of staffing, great. If we're not, we'll evaluate things as we go down the road. I understand Ms. Spence-Bonnett's frustration with some of my answers. I am an attorney. It's hard to get a direct answer out of an attorney because I don't want to commit to something that I can't honestly commit to. But I can commit to us establishing these standards in our office, working towards meeting those standards. But I can't tell you that this is going to be a sufficient amount of additional manpower to meet those standards. All I can tell you is that we're going to push forward and try to make those happen. So those are the types of things that we're trying to do. Right now, I'll give you an example of the types of things that we're missing. Today, we received a phone call from a victim in a case. Simple, straightforward case. OVWI, drunk driving. Defendant was arrested after a vehicular crash. Part of the report says it's a rollover crash. Another part of the report has the mark that there was a crash and indicates that the person crashed into a parked vehicle. The victim called our office today and said, I see the guy entered into a guilty plea. He pled guilty to a felony and to a misdemeanor. My vehicle was damaged in all of this. My insurance didn't cover it. Why was there no restitution requested and ordered in this case? The only thing that I can say is we dropped the ball, right? We had conflicting information in that report. Clearly, we didn't look at it closely enough to decide that there was conflicting information, that we needed more, that we should have gotten the crash report. Unfortunately, this victim's name in the police report that was provided by the Indiana State Police, the victim is not mentioned anywhere. But we still should have caught it, and we didn't, because we don't have the time to go over these types of cases when we see, as I've noted in the information that I've provided, the dramatic number of increases just in our OVWI court since we've dropped that down to one attorney when those numbers started to drop a few years back. Those are the types of things. These aren't big things when you look at it in the grand scheme of murders and things like this, but I guarantee you it was a big thing to this victim. And we shouldn't be missing those things. But we don't have the manpower to make sure that we are. This is going to help.
So you have changed something. When you did we tried the plea agreements and they didn't work.
I did not see, and neither did any of the attorneys, especially the attorney that was in that position, who is now a public defender, right? She's worked on both sides. She understands both sides. When I talked with her yesterday, she confirmed that no, there was absolutely no appreciable increase in those cases getting resolved, even though she was working at them at a very early stage of the process. But if we can make it a matter of routine, where every case is being processed at that early stage like that, and the other parts of the system get in the habit of doing those things as well, I think we can have a dramatic increase. Like the criminal justice study said, though, it starts at the prosecutor's office. It's incumbent upon the prosecutor's office to do these things earlier so that the other parts of the process can work earlier.
So is there a dollar figure that the prosecutor's office has in mind that would hire and retain deputy prosecutors?
You know,
You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Well,
but I'm just
here's the
curious
pro-
how we solve the problem.
yeah, sure. Here's the challenge that our county has, and I don't fault the county for entering into the agreement that gets us reimbursed 40% of our public defender costs on felony cases. That's a huge amount of cash that comes in. But under the system, if I asked for, let's just say, marginally a $10,000 increase for one of my deputy prosecutors, who's one of the highest paid deputy prosecutors, that would cost $10,000 plus whatever the incidentals that are associated with that would cost. However, that would also result in an $8,000 increase to every single public defender. There are 28 of them. So that $10,000 increase for one of my deputy prosecutors is going to cost the county $300,000. I understand why I can't ask for that, and so I don't. You guys, again, you guys have done a great job. You guys have pushed forward. You've made some of those improvements. But given the current circumstances, I would much rather see our office gain additional employees. And I apologize to our current staff. I would much rather see our office gain the additional employees, take some of the stress off of them, because I realize that pay increases are not a likely thing with the system that we have set up. However, Mr. Morris, if you would like for me to make that proposal, I would be glad to. Right? You're shaking your head like I've had to do a couple of times when I try to crunch those numbers.
No. So it comes back to what Ms. Spence-Bennett said, to keep people out of the system.
Yes. And I appreciate the statement that was read earlier. I've actually spoken with Ms. Bennett on this issue. One of the things that our office is currently working on, you've probably already heard some about the traffic amnesty program that helps people pay off their past traffic tickets they may not have paid. One of the things that I'm proposing to Mr. Modisett, and he's already approved us in theory of doing that, we just have to work out the details. Talked with local attorneys. I've talked with some of the public defender's office. We would like, one of the problems that was identified in city court to me from the clerk was the dramatic increase in driving while suspended cases in the Terre Haute City Court last year. In approximately August, they were up to almost 700 of those cases, and that was a tremendous increase over what they had in previous years. Again, I can't tell you what enforcement efforts have changed that have resulted in that. But one of the things that I want to do is create a program where we set up shop and we open it up to the community where you can come in and we will sit down with you and we will go through your driving record and figure out what steps do you need to take to get your license valid again if you can do that. And so the hope is not only can we serve the community by identifying those things for them, especially by doing it this year, they may be able to take benefit from the traffic amnesty program, as well as the waiver of reinstatement fees option that's available. And we may be able to help people get their driving license back. We know they're going to drive, right? Let's get them legal. Let's help them get legal. I do that on an individual basis all the time. People will call up to the office and they will say, hey, I found out this happened. I'll set up a meeting with them. I'll go through their driving record with them. And there have been times where I've agreed to vacate prior adjudications or convictions so we can get them valid. If they've had a period where there have been no violations, there have been no traffic criminal arrests or anything like that, we want to work with people to help them get those back. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of months we're going to be able to implement a full-fledged program where we'll have people coming in and maybe offer that 2, even 3 times during the calendar year. Again, keeping people out of the system up front, keeping them from coming back in the system if we can do that. Those are the types of things that we're hoping we can continue to work on. Along with that, I don't want to say leading, but I'm trying to coordinate a huge effort in developing a diversion or a deflection center. Again, Ms. Spence-Manette has been a part of that from the very beginning. She was part of a trip along with other members of our community to a facility up in the Chicago area. I know Councilman Loudermilk, along with Judge Roach, attended a training for implementing these types of programs down in Florida last year. And we have the United Way that we're working with right now, and that is a big push that they have in the community to try and implement this type of a diversion center. If we are able to implement a diversion or deflection center, that's going to work in conjunction with our law enforcement officers that have been going through the crisis intervention training. And they can then turn around and they can look at an individual that they're encountering and make a decision. Do I take them to the jail? Do I take them to this type of deflection center or diversion center? Right now, they don't have that option. And so our jail is the one that ends up dealing with those that are in a crisis situation. So there are certain programs that we're working on. I certainly am thrilled that the council has made a statement that they are wanting to support those types of programs, and I look forward to working with you all to determine and figure out what we can best do to keep people out of the system.
Okay. Other questions? Go ahead.
May I go back to your statement about the 500 plea offers where you didn't see any speed of increase in processing?
Yes.
What period of time was that, Mr. Roberts? 500 cases over what period of time?
That was a little over a year.
I was interested in, you gave a response to me to some additional questions earlier today, and you mentioned getting to a plea offer in 60 days. In your email response, you indicated that currently plea offers are typically made closer to the 120 to 150th day. That's quite a difference.
It is.
How many of the people, and I know this would be a guess, but how many people would that impact who might be sitting in jail? If that plea offer were accepted and they were released, is that an appropriate question?
It's an appropriate question, and it is an appropriate consideration. Again, the challenge that I have in answering that question is we don't have any control over what happens after we make that agreement. And right now, the bulk of the discussions that take place about resolving cases usually happen as what's called the final pretrial conference, which is usually set about 2 to 4 weeks, but typically 3 weeks prior to their jury trial date. And so that's when the bulk of these discussions and negotiations take place. My hope is that we can, if we have a system in place in our office where we're getting these plea offers out prior to the 60-day mark, that all of the courts will then start adopting the 60-day review. Right now, Division I, I know, does that on a regular basis. Every case has a 60-day review. If we can make sure that we are taking action on our cases prior to the 60-day mark, then I'm hoping that the courts will then adopt a similar system to have a hearing at that 60-day mark, which could directly impact that.
So I appreciate that, and I guess what I'm hearing, and now I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the larger picture that I seem to be hearing about, is that despite some of your efforts at improvement, there's not a cooperation or a collaboration, or there are other things working against, whatever they are, there are other factors that work against your efforts to improve, and ultimately the whole thing doesn't get better.
Sure.
I hear you saying that maybe if you all do this, maybe others will be moved to do that. I also hear you saying that a judge said, well, we're going to implement a process or a case processing system, and your office is not going to like that very much. So I wonder if, and again, I appreciate your efforts, but what I'm hearing is that we've got a system where one part might be trying to do better, but without the whole system coming into play and really working together to try to achieve the same end, which is to be as efficient as possible and effective as possible, that maybe your efforts and what we do here might not even have any impact.
And that's fair, but I think you also need to take into consideration, and I've never been a defense attorney, so I can't speak, I don't want to act like I'm speaking for them, but certainly I've worked with enough of them, and as a prosecutor, I have to anticipate what they're doing on cases and what I expect them to do. There are a lot of considerations that a defense attorney has to take on their case. Some of those things is that over a period of time, witnesses disappear witnesses are no longer available in the community. Maybe there are things that they are hoping their client can accomplish as their case is pending, such as completing a treatment program or completing a counseling program or getting a job or finding stable housing. All of those things that can ultimately impact what the state recommends on a sentencing agreement or when we argue sentencing in front of the court. So they have other obligations to their client that I think, depending on the particular case, don't necessarily jive with the goals of efficiency that the rest of the process may have.
Right, and nobody would want efficiency at the expense of effectiveness or quality, and I want to make sure I say that.
Right.
One final thought, I'm just wondering, and you may offer reasons why this wouldn't be a good idea, but I'm wondering if we should wait, if there's a big change coming, what are the chances that when that change comes and that new case processing or case management system is implemented, that would significantly change anything about your operation that might be of note with regard to the requests that we see here in front of us tonight?
I don't think that it will change, I don't think that it will lessen our need for manpower. If anything, it's going to increase that. And so knowing that that's on the horizon, again, this request was made based on the increase in case filings.
Sure.
And so that's the primary motivation behind the request. I only know that I've had the discussion with the judges in the past. I knew that they had talked about implementing some sort of case management system in Vigo County. I didn't know where it would go, if it would actually happen. That was the only indication that I've got was last week that it's probably on the horizon. But any type of case management system, at least in the near term, maybe in the long term it makes a difference, but in the near term it's not going to increase. It's not going to decrease. It's only going to increase our needs.
Thank you.
Something like that.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts, you brought out some things, so it gives me more questions. So you mentioned driving while suspended.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Increased number. Been around a few people with suspended licenses, child support, things like this. Very cumbersome and seemingly expensive to be reinstated.
Yes.
Is there a percentage of those cases that could, I mean, I just see some of these things, and a couple of cases I've been around, they're the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of dollars,
Yes.
and the previous girlfriend or spouse is never going to get the money.
Right.
And you've got somebody driving around without a driver's license, and I would think that they could be adjudicated and done and processed, and person have a driver's license pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
I mean, you make an agreement. I'm going to pay you $10,000. It's going to be this much a month. There's processes in the effect of it, and be done with it and clear it off. Get the person a driver's license, but you're punching them in the mouth every time.
It was interesting to me recently. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm sorry. You need to interrupt. I was getting a little carried away.
It was interesting to me recently. It was in December, actually. John Swanner had posted an image from the Marion County Prosecutor's Office that said for 1 month they had a special program going on for people who had their license suspended for their child support obligations not being paid. That if they would come in, they would make a payment, and they would agree to a payment process, they could have their license reinstated. But they were only doing that for a very limited time. That's our policy all the time. If somebody will just show up at their court hearing, if they will make a payment and they will sign an agreement that says, I will continue to make my payments, we will reinstate their license within 48 hours.
Huh.
This is not a battle for us. We're not trying to deprive people of their ability to legally drive. It's a tool for us to get their attention and hopefully get them
No takers
in that situation. Some do, but many of them just never appear for their hearings at all. and never bother to show up. The other thing that I will say we do on a regular basis in city court is we give everybody that comes into the court that has the ability to get their license back, we give them time to do that. So they may come into court on a driving while suspended. It could be an infraction, it could be a misdemeanor, it could be a criminal case, a Class A misdemeanor. And we'll look at their driving record when they're in court, and we'll say, okay, you have this ticket that you need to get paid. You have this ticket that you need to get paid. This is your reinstatement fee. Go over to the county courthouse, get the forms to have a waiver of your reinstatement fee. And how much time do you want to do that? And we'll have you come back. And if you show us you've gotten your driver's license valid in that time period, we will dismiss this. We will drop it down to a no valid license in possession at the time. They pay the lowest possible traffic infraction ticket fee, and they've got their license back in the process with no additional suspensions. We do work with these people, but like I said, the program that I'm hoping to implement will make it so they don't even have to appear in the city court process for the first time. If they take advantage and they come and talk to us, we can hopefully guide them through the system to get their license back. We make considerable efforts, but obviously it's not had enough of an impact, so we're looking at what more can we do.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I make a suggestion? Well, I get about 3 of us together, and we get together with the prosecutor and see what, maybe Lisa, you come with a person that carries these people through the system. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like something can be done. I've heard this once. I bet I've heard it 20 times from people I've been around. And on this reinstatement, I wasn't aware that you gave them those opportunities.
We do, and I'll give the legislature credit. When they passed the option for people to have these reinstatement fees waived, it completely changed the ballgame, because these fees, they add up so quickly. They may be to $1,500 or $3,000 just because of 3 or 4 cases in the past. There are some times where that first reinstatement fee is $1,000.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so the legislature, in response to that, they did set up this system where the fees can be waived. And to the best of my knowledge, our office, we are a party to those requests. We have never objected to one.
Okay. So,
Mr. President,
yes.
let me just say too, it could be that sometimes these folks may be people who do not read the newspaper, do not watch the news, and they are not aware.
Yeah.
I mean, it could maybe use a little bit of publicity. It could be a thing that a billboard, TV, something, a PSA.
Yeah.
That might be a good idea to get the word out there to say, this is your lucky day. Honest to
Absolutely.
God, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it might work, because they've got enough problems. They don't need that.
Right.
Okay.
I think at this point, I'd like to give at least one more try. I'd like to appoint maybe a committee, talk with Mr. Roberts about these things, identify, maybe table these other 2 motions, and move ahead to the April meeting.
It's a great idea. You need a motion?
Well, I need a motion to table, and I would need and then I'll identify the committee. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you make a motion. That's just my suggestion. Any more discussion?
Move to table. I move that we table this until the April meeting.
I second.
Okay, so we're going to table item 3 and 4 of importance right now, right?
Okay.
Okay. Any other comment?
Did you second?
Ms. Auditor, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Spence Bennett.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer,
Nay.
Councilman Mann,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wager,
Aye.
Councilman Thompson,
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
just a point of clarification. Do I understand the motion to reference A and C as opposed to 3 and 4? I think it's on the agenda. It's
20,
indicated as subparts A and C.
yes. Yes, their item, salary ordinance 2020-11, I think, and salary ordinance 2020-12.
Correct.
Is there any special way that this needs to be tabled? Because I know last time we had an issue involving whether or not it has to be re-advertised or not. And so I just want to try and avoid that.
The only,
I think if it's tabled to a date certain, it doesn't have to be re-advertised. Now, I don't know. I guess that may depend upon what we're going to do with the appropriation ordinance if we go past that tonight.
they'll pass, well, they'll have to do some of it because they've added position requires it. So you won't be able
Okay.
so it's the ordinance, the additional appropriation ordinance is not going to be tabled, it's going to be amended. So you'd have to re-advertise for
Yes.
the next one.
Very clever of you. You've been shot before, haven't you?
Anything else, Mr. Council?
I think what Calista is saying, though, is that we only have a single appropriation ordinance, if I'm correct. So that will probably have to be amended and passed, which means in order to consider the other parts of it, we're going to have to probably re-advertise.
Correct.
Okay.
With E, with the appropriation ordinance 2020-05,
Yes,
we can't amend that tonight,
you can amend it, but
and then we won't have to re-advertise?
no, you'll have to re-advertise when you
re-advertise it.
come back to visit A and C.
If. Okay. So what if we pass this ordinance, but we don't pass these other two tonight?
Just advertise the other two. Right.
Then we don't have to advertise anything, right?
You mean appropriate something you
Yeah.
don't have a need for yet?
Yes.
You could do that. Or you can re-advertise it. I think it'd be
Okay,
much
Mr.
cleaner to re-advertise
Re-advertise it, yeah.
Okay. All right.
based on what you determine through your committee and what recommendations.
Are we taking it back to committee?
But you can amend 2020-05 for amounts that would be sufficient for what has been passed this evening.
Okay, can we come up with the amounts?
Yes, we can.
All right. So any discussion on additional appropriation ordinance 2020-5? Is there any motion to amend that or have to amend that?
How do you want it?
You need the dollar amount.
No, they did. Yeah, they did. It was all high except for
Pass the one legal secretary did.
yeah. The total for 2020-05 would be 35,875. And that would be broken down, payroll salaries at 16,061, FICA 1229, PERF 3985, and group insurance 14,600.
I cannot hear you.
Can't hear you.
We'll try that again.
Okay.
The total, based on the one ordinance that was passed that requires an additional appropriation, would be payroll and salaries at 16,061, Social Security / FICA at 1229, PERF at 3985, and group insurance at 14,600 for a total of 35,875.
So I move to amend additional appropriation ordinance 2020-05 to 35,875.
Based on those totals that I just read?
Yes, based on the totals for those two elements that we've approved tonight.
Yes, and can you also include amending the account numbers, the last section to be .0009 instead of .009?
And also to amend it to correct the last account number to be 009 as opposed to 0009.
The other way around.
The other way around.
To be 009.
0009.
Okay, that's what I mean. What you said, to be 0009 instead of 009.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
Gets it done.
We have a second. Yes, Vicki?
Mr. President,
Yes.
may I please get the auditor's office to verify the numbers? Are you comfortable with what was provided?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Okay,
I had calculations already.
okay.
Wait a second.
All right, anything else? We have a motion, so roll call vote, please.
Who made the second?
Who made the second? Vicky. Oh, Vicky, okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Spence Bennett.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. Okay, so we've tabled 2 items, we've passed 2 items, and we've funded those 2 items, correct?
Good to go?
All right. Nixle policy.
Thanks, Rob.
No, thank you.
You got that?
Nixle policy has passed out the last meeting. Personnel committee heard it, and it passed favorably 3-0. Vicki, do you have anything you'd like to add about? I don't have policy.
No.
We're good.
Yeah. I think so. Well,
We're good.
All right. Okay, do I have a motion?
Let's see, what do we just? Just adopt, what do we
It's on
say?
page 11.
Just adopt the policy? Mr. President, I
Yes.
move we adopt the Nixle public notification system policy as presented.
Okay, we have a motion for the Engage Public Notification System, Nixle. We have a
second.
We have a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
Somewhere in this process, is the county council involved, or are we just one of the players in this in terms of providing information? Does this council have any responsibilities?
With the changes that have come around as this has evolved from back last year when we talked about it and further, at this point, the council is going to be over one keyword for the council and not, so it is a player. It's not a decision policymaker.
Where is the, I'll go back to the question I asked then previously. It's my understanding that we control the purse strings, that we are not an element of government that executes what we create. We have executive branch members, they have office holders. We are the financial arm of this. So where is our where's our authority on that?
I don't know if this answers your question, but the Personnel Committee approved this with a recommendation that the county council administrator actually be responsible for the coordination of the initial implementation. I don't know if that addresses your question, but we would.
What does that mean?
Well, it means Calissa would organize the efforts. In my mind, what I was thinking was that Calissa would organize the effort to review who might have codes and work with departments to prioritize who might want and who might get one of the 5 codes, and then work out the procedures for how messaging would go out and how those codes would be used, that she would organize an effort to make sure that this is implemented in a good way.
That was the original plan. However, as shortly before the meeting, I had a discussion with Vicky Oster with 911, and things have changed a little bit. And so now we have been issued a keyword that we can use for the council. And the rest of it will be taken care of through the commissioners or other agencies.
Yeah, I think that would be right.
Okay.
Right. Vicky Oster, Vigo County 911. Basically, since it is under 911, then I have to be the administrator of it.
Right.
So I have in this Nixle that we have available right now, they have the ability to have 5 keywords. So there can be 5 different departments here that can each have their own, and it's according to the keyword that they choose for theirs.
So you would go through a process of identifying candidate departments who may want a code and establish kind of what best uses are and something about how it will be used so it's used in the best possible way, and kind of administer that whole process?
Right. I mean,
Okay.
I can have someone, so I would have to initiate an invitation to become involved and basically be able to send out messages. And that could be under whoever you all decide would, be more suited to do that. And then they could be responsible for your department's messages, however many people you want to have on there. There's unlimited on how many people can actually send out messages. I have 23 dispatchers and myself, and and 3-4 part-time people, and every one of them can send out messages. So it's unlimited on who can send out. But there are 5 different keywords, so there could be 5 different departments for, like, example, county highway, the auditor's office, whatever.
Oh, right, and that's what I understand. So somebody, it seems to me, has got to say which departments are the best ones to use the remaining 3 keywords, and then hopefully each of those departments, including the county council, will have some kind of process by which we establish what kind of messaging is going out.
Right.
I mean,
And that will all come out under your logo and not 911. So
right.
it will be under the Vigo County logo.
Right, so I think when we passed this in the Personnel Committee, I was hoping that, and perhaps it's Calissa and you, Ms. Oster, to kind of organize that, look for those units, other units that wanted to do this, and make sure that the right sort of the good messaging policies are established. And that's what I was referring to with regard to Calissa's involvement on our behalf.
Yeah. But so I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I recently just got this worked out with the Nixle company. We had to rename it and things of that nature. So,
Question, Mr. President.
Mr. President?
Seems like when we appropriated that money that this was for the council, for the communication for the council to try to get information out, more transparency type of thing, if I remember correctly. Now we've got where we're going to be administering other departments, possibly not. We don't give them the authority or the keywords. I don't know. It seems like it's missing its focus on what we were talking about. I can't, maybe it's just me, but I can't even think about how I'm going to even use it. I mean, if I was the highway department, I guess you'd put out a blast that says you'd have a tree down or something like that. But then again, I'm thinking, I like with you, Mr. Mann, I'm thinking, well, that's the commissioner's job. So I don't think it's what we appropriated money for to begin with.
Council President Morse,
Yes.
when you're talking about appropriating the money, it was appropriated in the 911 funds to pay for Nixle. 911 funding, of course, comes from the state, from your 911 funds.
Okay.
It is not, so your cell phone bill, this is what comes from there. It's
So
not like
it's not
tax money.
ours, which Mr. Mann
And you
said.
do appropriate that fund. However, I have spoke with those in charge of 911.
Right.
And at first, because I've been through an audit with 911 for the last 3 years individually, and I
Yep.
won't go into
Okay.
detail as to why. However, those funds can only be used for certain things.
Yeah.
And at first, when I spoke with her, there was a little bit of an issue of someone else using that other part when it was non-emergency services.
Okay.
However, after speaking with her, she kind of got it approved through the 911 board over there that that other one that she is paying for that has not been used, they will allow, since it's only like $1,000
a year.
That being said, it's to still be administered by those in charge of emergency services. So that one line is fine. She can set up 5 keywords if that's what you want, and someone can administer your portion, and you could do the rest. However, I think you're getting into something here if you're trying to take over that line. 911 was not in very much favor of that. I mean, so the money is coming from 911 funding. You've already appropriated it for the last 2000.
I think 2014
14,
is when we
15
started
is
in
whenever
Nixle.
it was approved by the board, the state 911 board, to even use Nixle. You have to have an approval, which I
okay.
got the letter.
All right.
But in the
It's
20,
more for informational sort of things. I mean, it's not for like, like la-di-da advertising stuff. It's for like good information stuff that you're supposed to know.
And that is correct. We told them exactly what it was to be used for, and that's okay, but it is for emergency services, so we can, they've okayed that other one to be used for that, but the administering of it should probably remain with 911, except for the keyword or what you want placed on it.
And you can use those, or you don't have to. There's just 5 available to be used.
So what are you going to use yours for?
We have ours set up. We have notifications that go out to all the fire departments if there's an issue with our CADs. We have one set up that we notify dispatchers of positions that need filled due to illness or vacations, things of that nature. So we have you can have one thing and then have different groups set up in underneath it. So we use ours a lot of different ways. Notifying of when they're out flying drones, so we have an area that, like the sheriff's department uses that for notifying people in that area that they're going to be flying drones. If we have a situation going on in a certain area of the city that maybe it's a police situation or whatever, we can send out a message on that saying, there's a situation in this area, detour this area, things of that nature. Weather is a big one.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Mr. President. Yep. Did you create pages 11 and 12 in our book on the Nixle Engage public notification system?
I did not.
Do we know who created these pages? Listed it. Are points A through H of number 5 consistent with what other departments have access to?
I've not seen that. I haven't seen that at all.
The social media policy of the Vigo County Personnel Policy Handbook's 2017. Is that the most recent edition?
Yes.
So that has not been changed in the last couple of years. I'm very supportive of getting information out. I'm very concerned about who has access, public trust, and there's a lot to A through H here. And to me, it's very different from what we've been asked to do in the past in terms of programs, in terms of appropriations. Do we have a responsibility with the county's website?
Yes.
Is this akin to what the council does with the council website?
Yes.
Who runs the Vigo County website?
Who runs it?
Who has the authority on the council website?
You mean who posts to the pages and things like that?
Who creates the departments? Who creates contact phone numbers?
For the council page, I am responsible for maintaining that.
What about the site itself?
That is through IT department,
Okay.
and they have a company, it's eGov, that hosts that.
Okay, so we have a page in the entirety. Is that similar then to what is being proposed here tonight? And I want to make sure, Cheryl, I'm reading this properly from what you have said. We are having access to one part of a larger system, much like we have one point of access to the county website.
Yes. Yes.
Do individual council members have access to the county website?
You actually have the ability.
It is a possibility.
Yes.
Because I'm reading that we would have the ability as well with Nixle as individual council members, noting the guidelines that are identified here. Is that correct? But if we have the policy established with the county website, which is a provider of information, but I don't see it as social media where this keeps being identified as social media. Is that a correct?
I think maybe we were under the assumption of the Nixle policy on here, we're just looking at number 4, not 5, 3, 2, or 1. I'm not sure. Is that correct?
Well,
Or are we looking at the whole thing?
the following principles should be employed when using social media services in an official capacity of the council. So I'm seeing that written. I see in the top right-hand corner, Vigo County Council and staff. So I'm reading that as all of us. And then I'm reading A through H as being a policy I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I'm just wanting to, we sign off on this.
Really, I mean, let's go through this. Let's go back to the history of how this all came about. This all started in 2019, and it was decided that, one, we needed a policy if we were going to do that, and two, it was then determined that it should be put in the budget in 2020. And if it was put in the budget, then we would come back and revisit this. Brought this back up, made a couple of the amendments and adjustments, I believe. We added H and maybe off the top of my head, it might have been G. Because felt like there just needed to be more clarification there. And since then, it has evolved that the commissioners have shown an interest in doing the same. And so then they've kind of taken some and they went in a different direction. So it was approved in the county council budget at some point for the 2020 budget for the cost to add an account with 5 users. Since then, it's been changed that now they're going to use one because they have an account that they've been paying for that nobody's been using. And so we'll get one keyword. So we are no longer looking at, signing up the clerk, signing up the health department, signing up parks department. That's not our responsibility anymore because somebody else has taken on that responsibility. So now you're looking at a responsibility of the council keyword. If you don't want to do it, then that's fine. It's not necessary to do this, but it seemed to be something everybody was in favor of being a little bit more transparent.
So this policy gives us the ability to, it basically outlines how we will administer our keyword and only our keyword,
Exactly.
adhering to good principles of social media-like kinds of services.
Correct.
Okay, so this is not about anybody else. Somebody else will administer 911 and anybody else that chooses to use another keyword. This is only for the council's administration of our keyword.
Correct.
Vicki, let me ask you this. Nixle is not like a social media type outlet. It is a serious informational thing, like school information, like tornado information.
Right.
I mean, it's not like.
We use it as an emergency notification
Guess what I'm
system.
doing this week at the council, that it's not for that. Nixle is not for that, as I have understood Nixle.
We use it as an emergency notification system. So when we got it, those of you might remember, we had Code Red in the past.
Right.
That was primarily a landline-based program that we used. When more and more people started using the cellular phones, we had to come up with something different in order to reach the more people that had cellular phones and not landlines. So we then went into, this company bought out Code Red and formed Nixle. So we went into Nixle. So this is actually for us. What we use it for is an emergency notification system. Now, if we want to do anything by social media, we have a Facebook page for Vigo County 911, and we put things, that's happening or events or whatever on that page. So this is something that citizens have to sign up for. They have to physically go in and sign up to get these notifications. So if they don't want them, they don't have to get them. And that's for all of it. I mean, we have to have people sign up for ours as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Mann.
When you said the council funded it, do you mean in the 911 budget?
No.
You mean in the council budget?
Yes.
Where?
It's in service agreements, I believe.
3,000?
I believe so.
Because we had budgeted 2,500 a couple of years and we.
$500. with the representative of Nixle?
So apparently, my understanding when I talked to them, because I've been reaching out to different companies to see what their services are, what they're doing, what they provide to us. And I discovered that we had an extra account that no one was using. So the representative told me one price. He was telling people over here a different price. So Calissa and I conference called and we worked that out. So there's a little bit of confusion on the $500. It is $1,000 a year per each engage that we add on.
You are comfortable working with the council's request at this time?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think that you all need to decide who have it. I don't think that should be up to me to decide who has access and who doesn't over here, because I'm not really involved with everybody over here. I mean, I don't know who needs it and who doesn't. So I can send out invitations to anybody. There are 5 keywords. I mean, different departments can make up their own. If you want to have a special one for, county roads that are being closed or being worked on or whatever, then that's fine. That's up to you. I'm just telling you what's available.
Can I make Mr. Morris, Council President Morris?
Please.
During the meeting, who was the representation to speak about this? Was it you, Ms. Oster, and commissioners, or was it who was there to represent?
As far as?
I assume we had to, or you guys, if it went 3-0 favorable, somebody had to be there to talk about the Nixle policy.
I was not.
Who was there?
It's the Personnel Committee.
That's it?
Yeah.
So no representation from the commissioners, or, I would recommend we table this until we get representation from the commissioners, because ultimately, even Ms. Oster has to report back to the commissioners. So before we decide anything tonight, it seems there's still some unanswered questions. And if we can get either 2 Andersons or Mr. Kearns here to speak about this, and we can ask those questions.
But may I clarify? It seems like we're only, and I was misunderstanding where we were, but it seems like now we're only thinking this policy is associated with our use of this capability. The commissioners still have presumably the wherewithal to administer. Ultimately, you report to them, right? So your administration of your keyword, as well as any other departments that they choose to let use this service, so they still can do that. If we're interested in having this, which I think the Personnel Committee thought we were, we're just approving that we would have certain policies or certain practices associated with our use of one of these keywords, which kind of says, I think we would need to figure out, Councilwoman Weger, to go to your point, you don't want to just put anything out that comes to your mind, because people will stop looking at it. They'll unsubscribe because it's just, junk. So we would have to figure out what has the most meaning for the council to communicate to interested parties who have signed up, and then communicate about those things that we think citizens are interested in hearing about. Like, the agenda is published for the next meeting. Or, here's a budget, we're going to have a budget meeting. And those kinds of things where people, it's hard for them to find it or remember to go look at the website. So if I'm interested, you're going to push notify me, and I'm going to say, maybe I can go to that. But it wouldn't be everything that comes to our minds. It would be a set group of things that we're going to communicate about on a regular basis.
Does anybody here in this group subscribe to the Nixle?
I do.
Okay.
I got it.
Well, I had some experience with it this last summer or summer before last. Some people subscribed to it, and in the position I was at, people kept coming up to me and asking me, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? They were panicked. And I said, I don't know. Where'd you find this? They said Nixle. Sheriff's Department's been putting this stuff out.
Well,
I
it's
think
probably during the
they were
fair, and it was
panicked.
missing
They
children.
were panicked because of these notices coming over their phone.
I think both of the law enforcement agencies have a Nixle account. I'm pretty sure that city does
I'm
as well.
pretty sure they do.
So
They
they
were putting
put
out
out,
weather notices and traffic notices and what have you, and the people go,
so that would be,
What
that's
did
an
you-
engage, just like this would be. They use it to put out notifications on whatever they have going on, if they have
Shooting in
it.
your neighborhood.
Right.
well, I don't think we've got any business being on it. It's not a public notification
That's
thing.
what I-
It's for tornadoes. So what are we doing
And
talking
that's-
about tornadoes
Yeah.
on the
and-
council?
And that's what, my thing was, I want what comes from 911 to be under 911.
I would entertain a motion, yea or nay. I don't think we need to table it. You can table.
So moved
Moved what?
to table the Nixle.
To table it?
Well, to what do
I
you
second.
do? Oops.
Okay,
Oops.
whatever. We have a motion by Ms. Wagner, second by
Wait a
Mr.
minute,
Schweitzer.
we already have a motion and a second that we didn't vote on.
Oh, we didn't vote on for acceptance?
Yes.
Sorry.
So what have we got?
We have a motion, so this was for the vote then, correct?
Yes.
Withdraw
No.
the
You
second.
have closer eyes than
I withdraw my motion to table,
All right.
as much as it's not applicable.
So this is, we have a motion on there for an up or down vote on accepting these guidelines. Is that correct? And
Correct.
just the council.
no, she withdrew her motion to table, which was void anyway.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any more action on that motion to adopt or not to adopt?
Council.
Did we get a second?
Even if they use their own. you need to get-
Who was the motion and who was the second?
Vicky was the mo.
Lisa's second. All right. Roll call vote.
To accept the
Well,
Nixle.
she has a question, so I think I'm
Yes.
gonna wait.
Go
She
ahead.
withdrew her table. I don't know.
Oh,
You
okay.
seconded the motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
This was the motion
Motion
to approve.
Aye.
To
Councilman
approve this.
Switzer,
Nay.
Yes. Yes.
Councilman Mann,
Nay.
Councilwoman Wager,
Nay.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson, Councilman Morris.
Nay.
Nice. Okay. that-
Thank you, Vicki.
Two, 4.
All right. That concludes that business. Are there any honorary resolutions? First reading by summary reference proposals, ordinance and resolutions. Okay, I believe we have a list of things here. We have the request of council 20-013 from the assessor. That goes to the personnel committee. We have a request of council 20-014 from the commissioners.
Mr. Morris,
Yes, yeah.
could you give the brief definition here? So-
Okay, yes, all right. 20-031 from the assessor.
1-3.
What?
1-3.
1-3. To establish deputy field assessor. For that, the payroll and salaries, FICA, and the associated costs to go with that. So request to establish a deputy field assessor. Okay, moving on to 20-014 from the commissioners, from the local income tax special purpose fund, project cost jail construction fund for an additional $5 million. That's all the clarification I've got on it, Counselor. Okay. Item number 20-015, Commissioners, permission to negotiate sale of parcel of the hydrite property which Mr. Wright expressed that, the Commissioners item goes to budget adjustment. Commissioners for permission to negotiate sale. Who do I want to assign that to? Annual budget, do you want to handle these next two?
We can.
All right. That goes to annual budget. Commissioners, permission to negotiate to acquire parcel of land next to the juvenile court center. So described in their legal description. Mr. Wright gave a brief description of that transaction. Annual budget. Verdeco?
So 15 and 16 are going to annual budget?
Yes, 15 and 16 are going to annual budget.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. 20-017 Verdeco abatement review. As stated and discussed earlier in the meeting with the assessor and the attorney for Verdeco, goes to budget adjustment. And I'd like the budget adjustment to establish the 20-018 encumbrances and to review those and come up with a satisfactory recommendation for those for our April meeting. And that's all I have on the docket. All right. Appointments. I have none. Next meeting Thursday, April 2nd at 6 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor by aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Who seconded that?
Schweitzer.
Mr. Schweitzer. Thank you, people. Did not mean to make that meeting that long.
It was a long meeting today to us. Not much happened. It was the prosecutors.
Yes, you certainly did.
Had a couple of little things happened. They got 2 part-time employees and then there's a secretary.
Some laws that we passed tonight.
Society of Trade.
Maybe got to go potty. Can't move it any longer.
Hold on, and I'll tell you.
Who knows? My potty is longer.